In the quiet town of Willow Creek, Ohio, the night was still, but Ellen Harper's kitchen buzzed with soft life. Vanilla-scented air, the hum of the refrigerator, the faint click of her laptop keys. It was 10:47 p.m., 3 nights before the long-awaited family trip to Key West. A trip she'd dreamed about for 4 years, saved for penny by penny. The oak dining table was cluttered with beach bags, each one labeled neatly in Sharpie: Liam, Grace, Ethan. Inside each were rolled-up beach towels, embroidered with Key West 2025, tiny bottles of sunscreen, goggles, seashell keychains, and handwritten notes that said, "I can't wait to see you smile in the ocean." Ellen's hands were still dusted with flour from baking oatmeal cookies, the kind her grandkids loved. She was tired, but the good kind. The kind that comes after doing something for people you love. Then her phone buzzed. A message from her son, Ryan. "Mom, you won't be joining us. Jess wants this trip to be just her side of the family. You've done enough by paying for it. Thanks." Ellen froze. Her heart didn't just sink, it cracked. The way hearts do when disappointment isn't surprising, just final. She stared at the screen, rereading the words until they blurred. She reached for her glasses. Her fingers trembled slightly. Another buzz. "Don't take it personally, Mom. It's just cleaner this way." Cleaner. Like she was clutter. Like her presence was mess, and her money was enough. Ellen looked around the room. The beach bags, the carefully stacked travel documents, the handwritten itinerary she'd made with smiley faces beside each child's name. Her eyes landed on the old photo of Tom on the fridge, shirtless, suntanned, laughing by the sea with his harmonica in one hand and a margarita in the other. 42 years ago, he'd proposed on a wooden pier in Key West. The ocean had glistened behind them, and he'd said, "Let's come back someday," with grandkids running in the waves. She had kept that promise. Alone. She reached for her laptop and opened the folder labeled Key West Dream Fund. Inside were spreadsheets, confirmation emails, packing lists. She clicked open her banking app. There it was, the account she had fed for years. Balance, $18,492.37, linked to the rental house, flights, activities. Sole account holder, Ellen Harper. Her finger hovered over the button, Lock Account. She didn't click it. Not yet. She closed the app and stood, letting her fingers brush over each beach bag. She imagined Liam's laugh, Grace's wide eyes, Ethan's tiny hand in hers on the plane. She'd saved for this memory, for the smell of sunscreen and salt in their hair, for photos under a Key West sunset with Tom's harmonica playing in the background. Now she wasn't going. She was funding someone else's dream. And she wasn't even in the picture. The next morning, Ellen didn't reply to Ryan's text. She didn't reply to Jess's follow-up voicemail either. "Hey Ellen, just checking that the final payment is good to go. Everything's set. We're so excited." Her voice was sugar-sweet, like nothing had happened, like she was the assistant, not the mother. Ellen sat in her chair by the window, watching the neighbor's dog chase a squirrel. The sun was rising, but the warmth didn't reach her chest. Her hands were folded in her lap, still and quiet. She thought of her years as a school librarian, helping kids feel safe and seen. She remembered her late husband Tom, who once said, "People like you, Elle, you're the glue, the quiet kind that holds families together." What happens when the glue is ignored? When people stop seeing its worth? That afternoon, she opened a blank document. Not to reply, not to argue. Instead, she typed a list of names. Maggie Sims lost her son to opioids. Ruth Anderson, retired nurse, never invited to her grandkids' birthdays. Diane Foster, stepchildren disappeared after their father died. Women who had given and been forgotten. She titled it Sunset Sisters. Then she opened the banking app again. Her thumb hovered once more. This time, she clicked Lock Account. "Are you sure? All linked transactions will be paused." Yes. All linked cards will be disabled immediately. Yes. Account frozen. Ellen stared at the screen. For the first time in days, her breathing slowed. It wasn't joy. It wasn't anger. It was resolve. The morning after Ellen froze the travel fund, she made herself a cup of black coffee. No sugar, no cream, just strong and bitter. It tasted honest. She stood by the window, watching frost melt from the edges of the backyard fence, and for once she didn't reach for her phone. No checking messages, no waiting for an apology. There wasn't one. Instead, her voicemail light blinked red. Ryan had called, twice. One message, muffled and hesitant, played out across the kitchen counter. Hey, Mom, we're trying to check in for the flight. There's an issue with the booking. Can you call the agency? Jess is on hold, but they said something about the card not going through. Just give us a ring, okay? Then another message, Jess this time. Her tone was tighter, the syrup gone. Ellen, the rental company is saying the payment didn't clear. This is really last minute, and honestly, it's putting us in a tough spot. We can't afford for things to fall through right now. I need you to fix this. Fix this. Like she was a technician, or a servant, or a vending machine with a glitch. Ellen let the phone go silent. She rinsed her mug and dried it with a hand towel embroidered with Grandma's kitchen, where memories are made. The irony didn't escape her. That afternoon, she pulled down a box from the hallway closet, the one labeled Tom's stuff. Inside was his old harmonica, a Polaroid of their wedding night at the beach, and a copy of Songs You Hum While Watching the Sea, a handwritten journal Tom had kept full of lyrics he never showed anyone. She sat on the couch, flipping through the pages. On one dog-eared page, Tom had scribbled in blue ink, "Love is a tide. You can't keep giving if they won't meet you at the shore." She closed the book and held it to her chest. He wouldn't have let this happen to her. He also wouldn't have told her to stay silent forever. Ellen remembered the signs, each one tiny on its own, but together forming a pattern she could no longer ignore. There was Thanksgiving 2 years ago when Jess corrected Ellen's cranberry sauce recipe in front of everyone, replacing orange zest with canned jelly and laughing, "We're modernizing tradition." That same night, Ellen was cropped out of the family photo Jess posted on Facebook. When she asked why, Ryan said, "Oh, it was just a candid of the kids." Last spring, Ryan had hosted Grace's birthday at a trampoline park. Jess's parents were front and center in every group shot. Ellen was handed the bill for the pizza and told, "We'll Venmo you for our half." They never did. At Christmas, Ellen had brought a hand-knit sweater for Liam with his favorite cartoon stitched on the back. Jess glanced at it and said, "We're doing neutrals this year. Maybe he can wear that at home." At first, Ellen excused it all. They're young, they're overwhelmed. Jess is under pressure, Ryan's just caught in the middle, but middle implies balance. Ryan had tipped long ago, toward convenience, toward comfort, away from her. Later that evening, Ellen took a walk through Willow Creek's quiet streets. The houses were lit in soft yellows and blues. Leaves rustled beneath her sneakers. She passed Ruth's house and saw the porch light on, a lonely flicker behind closed curtains. She remembered how Ruth had stayed past retirement age, volunteering at the food pantry twice a week even after her arthritis set in. Ruth's daughter lived in Arizona, never called. Ellen had once overheard her at the grocery store saying, "Sometimes I wonder if I disappeared, would anyone notice?" Farther down the block, Maggie's wind chimes clinked in the breeze. Maggie had lost her son 3 years ago, a quiet overdose in the guest room. Since then, she hadn't left town, hadn't smiled much, hadn't been invited to much either. And then there was Diane, always offering casseroles at funerals, always remembered when someone needed help, but never when joy was being handed out. Ellen walked home slowly, her breath fogging in the cold, her heart no longer heavy but clear. They were going to Key West. Not Ryan, not Jess, not people who needed her money but not her presence. But the women who'd stood in the background too long. That night, Ellen sat at her laptop and reopened the document titled Sunset Sisters. She added names, ages, notes in parentheses. Ruth Anderson, retired nurse, loves crossword puzzles. Maggie Sims bakes blueberry muffins on Fridays. Diane Foster, once dreamed of visiting Hemingway's house. Joyce Redford, never seen the ocean. Pat Collins, walks with a cane but dances at weddings. Linda Tran, her husband left on Christmas Eve, 1997. 7 women, including Ellen. She smiled, not out of triumph but purpose. The next morning, she booked a video call with the travel agent. "I need to make changes," she said calmly. "Same dates, same location, but new guests." The agent hesitated. "We'd need to process a cancellation on the old bookings." "That's been handled," Ellen said. "I froze the payment. This time it's in my name." When asked if she wanted to book activities again, sunset sailing, pier dinner, snorkeling, Ellen paused. "Add a photography session," she said. "One with all of us, and don't crop anyone out." Meanwhile, messages from Ryan kept arriving. "Mom, card's still not working. We're at the airport. Please respond. The kids are crying. Jess says you're being unfair. We'll pay you back. Just, we're already here." Ellen didn't reply. She didn't need to explain. She wasn't doing it to punish. She was doing it to stop bleeding for people who never brought a bandage. That evening, she placed Tom's harmonica in a velvet pouch and tucked it into her carry-on. Then she found her swimsuit, the blue one she hadn't worn in years. It still fit. She stared at her reflection in the mirror. 68 years old. Wrinkles. Soft lines. Strong eyes. Not an extra. Not an afterthought. A woman on the edge of something real. The day before the Harper family's flight to Key West, Ellen's phone buzzed every few hours like a persistent fly. She didn't mute it. She let it ring, vibrate, and light up on the counter as she washed dishes, watered her plants, and folded laundry in quiet satisfaction. There were no apologies in the messages. Only confusion. Panic. Demands wrapped in false pleasantries. "Mom, it's Ryan. Look, I don't know what happened, but we need to get this sorted. The agency says payment bounced." "Ellen, it's Jess. This is really stressful for the kids. I don't know why you're doing this. Please call back. You said this trip was for the family, remember? Let's not ruin everything over one misunderstanding." One misunderstanding. She poured herself a glass of iced tea and sat by the front window. The summer sun fell in warm rectangles across the floor. The breeze lifted the edge of the lace curtain. There was no misunderstanding. There was clarity. Years of silence, brushed off comments, empty chairs at birthday parties, and accidental exclusions all building into this moment. Ellen didn't feel guilt. She felt space. At 8:12 a.m. on departure day, her phone rang again. She let it go to voicemail. "Mom, if this is about the text, I'm sorry, okay? Jess didn't mean it like that. We're at the airport. The kids are upset. Can we please just talk?" The message ended with airport noise, boarding announcements, a child crying, Jess muttering something in the background. Ellen imagined Ryan, red-faced, tapping his phone with shaking fingers. Jess pacing. The grandparents from Columbus watching, perhaps pretending not to notice the unraveling. She pictured the bags, the sunscreen, the itinerary, all of it falling apart. She took a bite of toast and opened her laptop. In her inbox was a message from the travel agency. Subject, urgent, cancellation notice. Booking for Harper family vacation, status canceled. Reason, primary account access frozen. Linked payment method declined. Refund issued to Ellen Harper ending in 7934. Note, a new reservation under Ellen Harper is confirmed for check-in August 10th, 2025. Ellen clicked print and tucked the confirmation into a folder labeled Sunset Sisters. Then she pulled out her notebook and began sketching out the week ahead. Later that morning, she called Ruth. "Hi, honey," Ruth said, surprised. "Everything all right?" "I was wondering," Ellen said. "Have you ever seen the ocean?" There was a pause on the line. "No," Ruth admitted softly. "I've always wanted to." "How do you feel about Key West?" Ellen asked. Ruth laughed, but Ellen didn't. "I'm serious. You, me, and a few others, all expenses paid, just women who've spent too long sitting out." Silence. Then Ruth's voice cracked. "Why me?" "Because you're always giving and never asked to be invited," Ellen said. "This is your invitation." One by one, she made the calls. Maggie cried quietly and said yes before Ellen could finish her sentence. Diane whispered, "I don't even own a swimsuit," and Ellen replied, "We'll buy one on the way." Joyce asked, "Do I need to bring anything?" And Ellen said, "Just yourself." Pat hesitated. "I haven't flown since 1986. Ellen smiled. "Well, you're due." By the afternoon, the group was confirmed. 7 women, all over 60, most of them widowed or forgotten or gently shelved by the people they once prioritized. She emailed their flight details and packed welcome envelopes, each with a seashell pin, a quote from Tom's notebook, and a note that read, "You matter. You're not invisible. This trip is for you. Love, Ellen." That night, she went to the basement and pulled out her old suitcase, the same one she and Tom had used on their honeymoon. It smelled of cedar and old perfume. She folded sundresses, sandals, and Tom's photo into a side pocket. Then she packed the harmonica. It had always been his thing, playing it on warm evenings or when the power went out. The grandkids would have loved it, but maybe it wasn't for them anymore. Maybe this time, it was just for her. At dinner, she toasted herself with a glass of white wine. She made a plate of roasted vegetables and garlic bread and lit a candle, just because. As it flickered, she whispered, "You'd love this, Tom. They won't get it, but these women will. You'd laugh at me flying 6 grandmas to Florida, but you'd be proud." She imagined his grin, the one that always made her feel like more than just Mom or Mrs. Harper. In his eyes, she had always been Ellen, the girl he met in a record shop, the woman he danced with in bare feet on a Key West pier. The next morning, the first text arrived from Ryan since they'd returned. "We're back." Things were complicated. "Jess is upset. The kids don't understand. Can we talk?" She didn't respond. The second text came a few hours later. "I checked the refund notice. It all went back to you. We had to rebook a hotel and rental on credit. Could you maybe refund part of the deposit?" Deposit. As if she was a vendor. As if what she gave was ever a transaction. She didn't respond to that either. Instead, she met the others at the community center parking lot the next morning. The shuttle van arrived at 6 a.m., the sky still blushing with pink and gold. Ruth brought homemade muffins. Diane had her suitcase wrapped in duct tape. Maggie clutched a worn photo of her son in his Little League uniform. Pat wore a straw hat 3 sizes too large. They looked like joy waiting to happen. As they climbed into the van, Ellen smiled at them, each one a chapter waiting to be told. She looked out the window as the van pulled away, Willow Creek shrinking behind her. Ahead was salt air, sunlight, and space to be seen. The flight to Key West felt like a quiet revolution. Ruth had never flown before. She clutched Ellen's arm as the plane lifted, eyes wide, whispering, "This feels like cheating gravity." Diane, a retired nurse, offered tissues and hard candy like a mother hen. "I used to fly all the time for conferences," she said, "but never for fun." She grinned. "This is more fun." Maggie sat by the window and cried quietly behind her sunglasses. No one asked why. No one needed to. Ellen watched them all, her heart swelling with a strange, fierce pride. They weren't tourists. They were escapees, survivors of decades of folding themselves small to fit into other people's lives. Now they were here, flying toward the edge of the map. When they stepped off the plane, the Key West air wrapped around them like a silk scarf, warm, fragrant, alive. Their shuttle van was waiting, and the driver, a sunburned man named Leo, helped load their luggage while Diane asked, "Is it always this beautiful?" He laughed. "Only every damn day." The casita was painted butter yellow with teal shutters and white trim. Bougainvillea spilled down from the rooftop like a waterfall of fuchsia. A wooden sign above the porch read, "La Vida Suave." Ellen unlocked the door, stepped inside, and exhaled. "This," she whispered, "is ours." Each woman claimed a room or a corner or a nook without fuss. Ruth unpacked family photos and lined them on the dresser like totems. Pat set up her knitting by the window with the best view of the ocean. Maggie took the attic loft and said, "I want to sleep closest to the stars." In the shared kitchen, they moved like a gentle tide, pouring coffee, washing fruit, arranging flowers. No one barked orders. No one sighed impatiently. There was time. And time, they found, was a gift they'd long been denied. That first evening, they gathered on the wide back deck with plastic wine glasses and bowls of fresh guacamole. A salty breeze played with their hair, and the sunset painted the sea in molten gold and apricot. Ellen raised her glass. "To the women we used to be," she said, "and the ones we're still becoming," Maggie added. They clinked glasses and sipped. No one rushed to fill the silence. It settled among them like an old friend. After dinner, Ruth pulled out a small Bluetooth speaker and played Sam Cooke. Diane kicked off her shoes and danced, slow and silly, arms waving like seagrass. Pat laughed so hard she cried. Maggie took pictures. Ellen closed her eyes and let the music wash over her. It was the first time in years she felt unobserved, not judged, not weighed down by expectations or disappointments. She wasn't Mom. She wasn't Grandma. She wasn't Tom's widow. She was Ellen. Just Ellen. The next morning, they walked to the beach. Ellen wore a navy swimsuit with a gauzy wrap. Her thighs jiggled. Her arms were soft. She didn't care. Maggie, who'd once had breast cancer, wore a tankini and a grin. "Scars are souvenirs," she said. Proof we stayed. Ruth wore a modest one-piece and a wide-brimmed sun hat, and when she stepped into the surf, she gasped like a child. "Oh," she said, her voice shaking. "It's warm." Diane floated on her back, eyes closed, whispering prayers of gratitude. Pat collected shells. Joyce, quiet Joyce, just stood at the shoreline, letting the waves kiss her ankles. Ellen waded out waist-deep, then turned back to the shore and looked. 7 women. All of them had once been the afterthoughts in someone else's story. Now they were the center of their own. In the afternoons, they napped, or read, or painted watercolors on the porch. Ellen began a notebook, just for herself. No grocery lists, no reminders. Just thoughts, memories, dreams. One entry read, "I thought starting over would be loud and dramatic. Turns out it's soft, like waves on sand, like a woman learning her own name again." One night, after a long dinner of grilled fish and laughter, Maggie asked, "Did any of you ever just want to disappear?" The question hovered. Pat nodded slowly. "After my husband died, I didn't speak to anyone for 6 weeks. I watched TV with the sound off, ate crackers, drank gin. I used to stand in the garage," Joyce whispered, "just to be alone. No one ever noticed." Ellen didn't speak. She didn't have to. The silence held her answer. But then she did say, "Maybe we didn't want to disappear. Maybe we just wanted to be missed." That made Ruth cry. No one apologized. Before bed, Ellen stepped out to the beach again. Alone. The sky was a velvet navy, stars sharp and clear. The wind carried the scent of salt and possibility. She reached into her pocket and pulled out Tom's harmonica. She hadn't played it since the week he died. She brought it to her lips and let the notes fall, soft and broken at first, then stronger. The melody wasn't perfect, but it was hers. Inside, Maggie stood at the window and listened. She didn't know the tune, but she knew the feeling of release, of return, of rediscovery. The trip wasn't even halfway over, but already something had shifted. They weren't just vacationers anymore. They were witnesses for each other, for themselves. And for the first time in decades, Ellen felt like she was not just alive, but awake. Ellen Harper stepped off the plane in Boston with sand still in her shoes and the scent of sea air lingering in her hair. The sky here was gray, the pavement damp with last night's rain. But she didn't mind. Her heart was warm. She carried no souvenirs, no keychains or t-shirts. Just a worn leather notebook, filled now with pages of truth, of laughter, of silence broken only by waves and whispered memories, and a photo taken on their last evening in Key West. 7 women standing in a circle on the beach, each holding a lit candle, their faces soft with joy and salt-kissed peace. Ellen looked radiant in that photo. Not youthful, not flawless, just whole. The house was exactly as she'd left it, neat, sunlit, and still echoing faintly with the presence of someone who used to sit in the armchair by the window, playing the harmonica. She placed her suitcase by the door and walked through the rooms slowly. She didn't feel lonely. For the first time in years, the quiet felt like hers. She poured a glass of water, sat at the kitchen table, and opened her phone. 37 missed calls. 11 voicemails. 2 texts from Nathan. 1 from Tanya. All unread. She turned the phone face down. That evening, Ellen opened the garage door and pulled out the 2 boxes marked Vacation Fund, Hawaii. She set them on the workbench, ran her hands along the lids, then opened them. Envelopes of cash. Notes in her handwriting, for plane tickets, for beach house, for family dinners. She stared at them for a long time. Then slowly, methodically, she began pulling the money out. She divided it into piles. Not for Nathan, not for Tanya, not for anyone who had mistaken her love for obligation. One envelope she labeled Carol, Painting Retreat. Another, Ruth, New Hearing Aids. Another, Maggie, Poetry Press Startup. And one final envelope she labeled simply Me, Next Trip. She smiled. 2 days later, Nathan knocked on her door. She didn't answer right away, just watched from the kitchen window as her son shifted awkwardly on the porch, holding what looked like a grocery bag and a stiff bouquet of gas station flowers. Finally, she opened the door. "Hi, Mom." "Hello, Nathan." He cleared his throat. "Tanya wanted me to come by. She says we all need to talk." Ellen tilted her head slightly. "About what?" He looked unsure. "Well, I mean, we didn't mean to hurt you. Tanya thought you needed rest, that the trip might be too much." Ellen said nothing. "I brought your favorite tea," he added, holding up the bag, "and those biscuits you like." She didn't take them. Instead, she asked, "Why didn't you ask me what I wanted?" He blinked. "What? Why didn't you call and ask how I felt about the trip? About being excluded from a vacation I planned, paid for, and dreamed about for years?" I don't know. I guess we assumed. That's the problem, Nathan. You assumed that I'd keep giving, keep forgiving, keep showing up with sunscreen and smiles, no matter how small you made me feel." He looked down, silent. Ellen softened, but only a little. "I love you," she said. But I won't let that love cost me myself anymore. He swallowed hard. So, you're not going to refund the fund? She smiled sadly. No, Nathan. That fund went where it was meant to go, toward people who saw me, valued me, and didn't treat me like an afterthought. The silence between them stretched. Then she stepped back and closed the door, gently, firmly. Weeks passed. Ellen began teaching free watercolor classes at the library. Her first class had 5 women, 3 widows, 1 divorcee, and a shy 20-something who painted flowers like fire. They brought coffee, cookies, stories. Some days they painted, some days they cried. Every day they showed up. One Sunday morning, Ellen sat at her kitchen table with a postcard from Diane in one hand and her harmonica in the other. The postcard read, "Rented a cabin near Asheville. Playing banjo with strangers. Might never come back. Miss you fiercely." She smiled. There was a knock on the door. This time it was Ruth, with flowers from her garden and news that Carol had sold her first painting. "We're meeting in Sedona next spring," Ruth said. "Hot air balloon rides, sunrise meditations, desert roses." Ellen didn't hesitate. "I'm in." That night she lit a single candle and stood on her back porch. No beach, no palm trees, but the moon was bright, the air was cool, the silence was sacred. She whispered the names of the women she now called sisters. Then her own name, like a vow. Ellen. Ellen Harper, still here, still becoming. The story doesn't end with forgiveness or reconciliation. It ends with a beginning. A woman walking into her own life, not as a shadow in someone else's, but as the light. Months later, a new message appeared in the shared Sunset Sisters group chat. "Next trip, Italy? I hear the Amalfi Coast is nice in May. Who's in?" Ellen responded with a photo of her passport and a single word, "Ready."